Still a catchy song after all this time.
I know. I love it. And we're back for
we're back.
Another exciting week.
The dynamic duo is back together.
Yeah,
once again.
Although we've been both traveling this week, and so we're playing
we're both exhausted.
A little catch up. Little plane jet lag. All those things. But yeah. Tristan, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I want to say a thank you to all of the gracious hosts who have stepped in over the last couple of weeks, as I have had just a lingering plague. I don't know.
Something a little this, a little that.
Yeah, I have not had COVID this entire time, but I've just had a weird virus that has hung on. It's still hanging on. And the fact that I had to be on a plane yesterday, like the pressure did something weird where it like shoved the feeling further down in my chest. But other than that, I'm doing okay. How are you doing, Jonathan?
I'm doing quite well. And so, in case our listeners are wondering, we happen to both be in Atlanta at the same time, but we had different agendas. I was there for our Southeast Guide Point Security Golf charity event, and it was quite nice. So it's been a good week, and we missed you on the shows, but fantastic support from the team over here. Phenomenal. And some incredible guests. Both Amber and Curtis were really cool to have on, and to hear about how they have gotten involved and dived into community, right? Especially around cybersecurity and the children's book stuff. And I think it's a great way. In fact, this is kind of the wrap up of our Cybersecurity Awareness Month.
This is the wrap up of Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And if you're curious about those special episodes, those great after school specials that we did, you can go back. Those are still archived on the Guide Point Security YouTube and also on LinkedIn. You can go back and watch those and let us know what you thought. And that actually is a great reminder to say thank you and welcome to anyone who is watching a video on demand of this and is going back to watch it. We appreciate your views as well. And if you comment on these, we will still be able to see them. we still get notified when that happens.
We watch the comments. We do interact. We love to hear from you, and we want to feature you in the show. But before we feature any content in the show, we do have to say a few, simple words. You ready for it?
From our sponsor.
Let's do it. Let's do a race. The video and opinions expressed by the host of the live stream do not necessarily reflect the official opinion of Guide Point Security. We do have to say that. Thank you for playing along. So welcome everybody viewing live. Welcome back, Tristan. This is the GPS Live week of October 28th, 2022.
Anno Domini.
There we go. Are we ready to kick off the first story? You wanna kind of sling us into this this first catchy headline?
Yeah, this is a good one. So combating catfishing with catchy clips. This, since we're in Cybersecurity Awareness Month, we've taken the idea that we should cover some stuff that's maybe a little bit more general application for folks. But it also speaks to the fact that a lot of the things that we've talked about recently, a few of the shows that I was on before I was deathly ill, we had stories about, people getting fake job applications or fake job offers, and that leading to compromise within their environment. And so this one is Hinge, the dating profile or the dating service is going to start offering video selfie verification. So to verify your profile as being real, you'll be asked to take a why am I frozen? I'm frozen.
We'll figure out the tech. While we're validating your selfie.
Yeah, we're validating my video. They are offering video validation. So you will take a selfie video that will then be scanned against your actual pictures using AI to verify if you're a real person or not.
Yeah, it's definitely really interesting. And so, as you mentioned, we've kind of covered topics on social media scams using fake accounts. In fact, LinkedIn has been a big target for fake accounts, fake executives, fake job offers. One of the areas that is often also looked is some of these romance scams. And that's kind of where this kind of fits in. And
Exactly.
so there's a parent kind of organization. There's a bit of a conglomerate when it comes to some of this stuff. In fact, so there's the Match Group, and many people have probably heard of Match, right? But Match Group has kind of an umbrella across a large number of brands in the dating app kind of scene, and they've been rolling out different types of facial recognition tools to do spotting of deep fakes, to do spotting of AI generated, right? This person's not real kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so we've already seen certain technologies applied in Tinder and Plenty of Fish. And now we're starting to see this type of photo, they're calling it photographic verification, coming to Hinge, OkCupid, and Match.com within the coming months. And just to kind of help weed out whether or not the person you're potentially talking to is a human, or is who they say they are, is not a
Yeah.
robot, or is not somebody who's trying to do something malicious, right?
Well, and it comes on the heels of a proliferation of fake profiles that um, have accounts that just look a little too glossy. The people are just a little too perfect. But another hallmark of it is something that we are all trained to look out for constantly. The questions that the profiles will ask you about, like, hey, what are you interested in, stuff, will have odd answers that are indicative of someone using a translation service.
Oh,
And
I
not fully understanding.
like basketball very much.
Yeah, basketball
Yeah,
fun life.
yeah.
But which is something that we all look out for on a pretty regular basis. We look
Mm-hmm.
at emails when we get them in phishing training and stuff like that
Yep.
to say, hey, does the grammar stack up here? Does it sound like it is the person who's actually answering this?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think one of the things that's important to think about is the context in which we see these things and the ways that people are using what they have available to them to gain access to these environments, right? We're in a weird economic time. People are looking to get better jobs, move jobs. And so you have a proliferation of fake jobs and fake offers that are out there to try and gain access to places. Going after the personal angle and the personal aspect and saying, like, oh, you're a person who is, on a dating app, and that's just as valid a way to gain access to corporate resources, because you convince them to take the conversation to a different medium that they're going to log into from work.
Mm-hmm.
It's just as important there, and oftentimes people have their guards down around something like that when compared to their work email, because they're vigilant about work email. It's contextual.
Yeah.
So it's great to see companies introducing this kind of verification, this kind of ability. Now, if only we could get that for actual job postings, that would be fantastic.
And well, so there's a couple things that are coming from this. The article specifically calls out that the verification process, right, is not necessarily mandatory for everybody. It is something that you can opt into. It also, considering, verifying people online still is kind of difficult. We did a story last week on the sale of verified social media accounts. And so I don't see this being necessarily a solid, hardened program to prevent all types of fraud happening. And you also
Right.
mentioned the other trick, which is oftentimes to help get the victim off of the starting platform to something like WhatsApp or some kind of other chat. So, because then the platform can no longer apply some kind of monitoring or security services to step in and say, this person's already asking for money, or this person's already trying to have you go somewhere, like a link. Maybe that's not safe, but it is under. It almost kind of seems normal to say, like, hey, here's my number. Why don't you just text me, right? I'm on
Yeah.
WhatsApp or whatever, and I can show you some great photos there.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely going to bring in a challenge, and this is another one of those areas that is ripe for targets because of the active interest in it. Like I said, people looking for jobs, and we'll go target fake jobs. People looking for dates, let's go target fake dates.
Yeah.
And the last thing I kind of wanted to touch on was the security of this data, right? Biometric data is extremely sensitive and can be used for all kinds of malicious things, right? And so where is this data going? How long is it being stored for? Who has access to it, right? And so they're saying it's held for 24 hours. It's held for analysis. There may be one or two additional screenshots captured for future use and re-verification if necessary. But that data now becomes potentially out there, and not everybody may be comfortable with it.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to consider when we're looking at adding these kinds of new steps and tools into our lives, and especially on this one, it's such a personal thing that you're doing, right? It's not something that you have to do for work or something like that. This is a personal choice about whether you want to do this. But again, like we both said earlier, it is great to just see the option coming out there for people to better protect themselves and make better informed decisions.
Yeah, I mean, all right. So I'm just gonna admit it. Like, I totally watched maybe an episode or two of Catfish on MTV at one time in the history of the internet, and
it was a phenomenon at one point.
Well, it was, and then yeah. So I mean, Catfish apparently is still around, the TV show, but yeah, these concepts. There was actually a story a couple weeks ago that I didn't necessarily feature on the show, but I did read over it in my research, and it was about an individual who was in a romance scam with somebody who was an astronaut apparently in the International Space Station and needed money to come home back to Earth. And I will just tell you, there's a story for everything, and sadly there are victims, and that was very real. And it's so I don't even know where to go with this one anymore.
Pay your own way.
Yeah,
pay your own way to the satellite and back. That's great.
Come back down to Earth, I promise.
Well, coming back down to Earth a little bit for our next topic. How about that?
Yeah. Well, then to segue into this one, instead of romance, let's just talk about selling the goods straight up. And this story, coming to us from Gizmodo, speaks about a kind of this website, this marketplace that was in dark web territory, we'll call Tor, and it was called The Real Deal. And what was a little bit different than some of the previous stuff, right? Back in the day, there was Silk Road, and that there was an entire arrest around that. But this one kind of stood out. It caught the attention of the feds very quickly because of what was being sold, right? When stuff like government credentials and hacking tools specifically, right? Alongside the other, I feel like, almost normal things of the dark web marketplaces, like drugs and guns, right?
Yep. And it also was the Real Deal was a site that was associated with a few high priority and kind of large scale breaches, including LinkedIn and MySpace, which it now seems weird to think about what a huge part of our lives MySpace was at one point. Like, I can't imagine that now a breach of MySpace would even like register on anyone's radar. They'd be like, oh, all right, cool. But at one point that was a really huge problem. So, but the owner and operator of the site, Daniel Kay, was arrested in London in 2019 on charges for a completely separate incident.
He seems to be doing this a lot.
It seems like maybe this was a bit of a lifestyle pattern for him. But he was arrested in 2019 in London, and he was indicted by the U.S. last year in April. But because he was being held by the U.K., he needed to be extradited to the U.S., which just happened recently, and he was arraigned on Wednesday on charges of owning and operating this kind of marketplace, The Real Deal.
So The Real Deal, he was the operator back in 2015 to 2017 when the website was actually active. Now, it did eventually shut down, but that didn't stop, different government agencies and prosecutors from trying to track this individual down, try to arrest them, try to extradite them back to the U.S. because of the targets, right? And the article specifically calls out stuff like NASA, U.S. Navy, Postal Service, and National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA. and even the CDC
Yep.
were all different accounts and credentials that were for sale and to be purchased on this website. So we kind of stepped beyond just the average weird website on Tor to now we're going to go after US targets and government targets. And that's how you get their attention, it sounds like.
Yeah. And it's I'm sure that this would have happened regardless, because this is a Justice Department operation, right? Like they are always going to be very vigilant and tracking these things down. But it is again, we keep on mentioning it and keep on bringing it up, but like the recent turn in the government towards being very proactive about these kinds of things and being having a much more hardline stance. um Oh, okay. I was like, man, now my camera's actually broken. But taking a much more hardline stance against these things, right? The fact that these are all years old cases at this point,
Yep.
and they were still pursuing it and still went after him. But I think it's also really great to see, because it's not like this was the last kind of site like this.
Yeah.
These types of places are still in use and still operating, but we've also seen an evolution past this kind of thing strictly, right? Like one of the things that he was arraigned for, and one of the charges, is that he was selling and giving access to 0 days that could lead to attacks against these organizations and against different companies. And now we have cartels that are set up explicitly to just do, as a service, basically offerings of this. And so to see the government taking the stance that it's taking and still pursuing these kinds of things is a little hopeful for the fact that one day some of these larger cartels may also be taken down and see their day. And it'll probably be for the same kind of thing that this guy was. He was not arrested for charges directly linked to the real deal. He was arrested for charges because he got greedy and did something else. So.
Yeah. And it's you're not completely safe if you're the operator of one of these different marketplaces or cybercrime and all these different things. And you're right. I feel like a lot of it's slowly becoming more connected, right? We're seeing cybercrime organizations leveraging ransomware as a service. And I just saw one earlier today, actually, in doing some research for this week on access as a service, essentially, where they just have bots planted on systems, and you can simply just purchase access as needed to a number of computers to do whatever it is that you choose, right? They don't really care. They're just providing access, or how about access as a service to a target, right? I need access to this company. Do you have any bots in this company that I could use to, pilfer network and stuff like that? And so, keep fighting them, right? Keep going after them. Years later, you think you're safe. No, keep looking over your shoulder. I like
keep
it.
Going for it.
I like
we
it.
Love to see it.
Well, tell us about this last story that we're gonna kind of roll ourselves into.
Still got a little bit of a cough here, but for this one, this is actually a kind of almost developing a little bit. Recent leak that came out, or that was exposed from Microsoft themselves. Microsoft has confirmed that the recent, I believe, what was it called? Blue Bleed. The recent Blue Bleed leak of information was due to a server misconfiguration. The original report was that it, I believe, was over 65,000 companies' data were included in the leak. But it's important to note here, right up at the top, that Microsoft has started combating that statement a little bit, given the fact that a lot of the data was repeat information. So while there may be more than 65,000 entries, they are not 65,000 individual companies. I think it's important to put that out there.
Yeah, and so Microsoft, they do seem to have a lot to say from this. So according to the article, this misconfiguration, right, which
article on the hackernews.com,
on the hackernews.com, resulted in the potential for unauthenticated access to some business transaction data corresponding between Microsoft and some prospective customers, and information around planning and provisioning of services. But what if you read between the lines, this was a misconfiguration of an Azure blob storage component, and which for those watching and tuning in online, similar to like an S3 bucket. It's basically a place to shove some data, whether it's like files and things of that nature. And there's always that like checkbox of like, make this public or make this private. And if you make it public, somebody is very likely to find it. And so we've seen, public-facing S3 buckets in the past, but this is extremely similar in nature as a public-facing, accidentally misconfigured Azure blob storage that was spotted and pulled down, in its current state. So,
So, the importance, I think, of this story is there's a couple aspects here for one, right, within Cybersecurity Awareness Month, from a corporate perspective, right, this really kind of, I think, comes back to like a housekeeping kind of thing, right? We always like to talk about and like focus on the big flashy stories because they catch our attention, they're interesting, and they can be kind of fun to read about, like, oh, how was XYZ attack actually, carried out? What were the specific steps? And it's easy to get caught up when you're practicing security in the big things that are happening, right? Like, oh, we're all really concerned about ransomware, rightly so. What are we doing to stop ransomware? Well, but at the same time, what are you doing to prevent small things, to go back and check to see, like, hey, are all of these accesses configured correctly?
Right. And this was not a vulnerability. This is the system doing as it's intended based on the configuration it received.
Well, to be a pedant, I wouldn't say that Microsoft intended for the system to do this.
I don't think they intended on it. To be publicly indexed for months, as they say on search engines.
Right, but it is.
But yes, there wasn't a hack per se that something was vulnerable and it was compromised and broken. This was
exactly
just a discovery.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's going back and it's making sure, hey, do we have anything that is misconfigured? Are we doing checks against that? What are we doing to what are we doing? Is there a process or a tool that we have that's running in the background checking for misconfigurations anytime something is spun up or spun down? What does our DevSec look like? What does our AppSec look like? And paying attention to those small areas. Or another really great one, right? Relating back to just some of the stuff that we were just talking about, access as a service, right? Are you properly auditing your identity and access management? As soon as someone is let go from your company, is their access revoked immediately? Is there anything that's lingering? It's that kind of stuff that slips under the radar, and then you have someone who can sell access using those credentials. So, it speaks to that from a Cybersecurity Awareness Month perspective, but it also takes a look at it from the opposite side of the housekeeping of just kind of like making sure that the vendors you're working with, even if they're really huge and respected and well known, like, what kind of data and information are you giving to them? What kind of access are you giving to them? And being conscious of that. We may not think about the fact that when we sign a contract with a company for XYZ services and tools, that if just that contract were to leak, that's enough to let someone know, oh, this company is using these specific tools, and I can now go look for vulnerabilities there or know what not to do in order to slip by. So it's really just kind of a general housekeeping thing from both the perspective of, are you taking care of the data? Are you being a good steward of your own data? But also, are the companies that you're working with being good stewards of that information as well?
And I think, something I've been trying to slip into the shows is like a good, useful tip, right, for our viewers and for those online, no matter the level, how technical you are. And I think my tip for this week is going to be never allow things to just remain as default. And this goes to any app that you have on your phone, on your computer, websites, things that you use, is when you create a new account on them, oftentimes there are a number of different configurations and settings that are laid out for you when you first establish an account. But you can go back and you can change things and you can make things more secure for your benefit. And oftentimes, it just goes with hopefully nobody recognizes it and we can continue to use all their data for profit. But if you go back, you can turn off stuff like advertising tracking, and you can turn off what's publicly accessible around your account. And so my tip of the day, or my tip of this week for Cybersecurity Awareness Month, is don't leave things on default, because it will come back and bite you.
Yeah.
So how about you, Tristan?
Final notes on this story, by the way. The group that discovered and publicly announced this leak, it should be noted that they have set up a search tool that you can go to, and if you want to go find the story on the Hacker News, just because we don't want to link directly to that search tool, and just in case. But the story on the Hacker News is Microsoft confirms server misconfiguration. That should get you there. And then that'll lead you down the rabbit path of the rabbit trail, but whatever.
We do put the stories in the comments below too.
Yeah, we do put the stories there. That's true. But the company that or the team that announced this, they did set up a search tool very similar to Have I Been Pwned, that allows you to go see, hey, was my data part of this leak? And that can, that could be a great thing for companies who are looking for it, but it's also important to note that anyone who wants to target you could go look at that. And while the tool does not expressly say what was leaked, we did mention earlier that this blob was unfortunately publicly indexed, so that data is out there. So if you'd like to go use that tool to find out, hey, am I one of the ones who might be impacted by this? Microsoft, of course, is also sending out notifications to customers.
Yep.
But if you'd like to go use that tool and check it out, that's great. And then you can kind of do your own legwork and figure out what potentially may have been leaked by going and doing some research of your own. But my final thing from this story is, I just loved this as a tidbit within the Hacker News, is that whenever a company like this, something happens, right? You've got something like a gas company, and the instead of referring back to the name of the company, they'll say the gas producer, the gas manufacturer, or whatever. So this one, it's all about Microsoft, and at one point they just call it the Windows maker. And I was like, that's not descriptive enough. No. You can't call them a Windows maker. But yeah, that wraps up our stories and brings us to the end of our brief half hour together.
Look at that. And so this has been exciting. I think it's been a wonderful way to end out Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And now it's spooky season is coming up next week, and then on to the rest of the hacks for the year. So
coming into the great shopping season when everyone is definitely not buying stuff.
That and change free season also, because if you break anything during the time when everybody's out or everybody's purchasing things, that's it. That's the end of it.
That's the end of it.
Shall we wrap up?
Let's wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining us for GPS Live for this week of October 28th. Again, if you're watching this on demand, we really appreciate you coming back and giving us some views there. And go ahead and please leave your comments on your thoughts on the stories. For GuidePoint Security, as always, I have been, will continue to be Tristan Morris.
And I'm Jonathan Singer.
And we will catch you next week on Friday at the same time, 10:30 Pacific, 1:30 Eastern. Thanks so much, folks.